serata in due lingue, anzi tre, maybe even three languages tonight because of our guests. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this, the 7th edition of the GIF Talk series, which brings authors, not just Italian and American authors, but authors that are usually working in a number of different languages to speak at Gonzaga and Florence about their work with Professor Raveggi. Just a few words about Gonzaga and Florence for our visitors. Gonzaga and Florence is a United States, U.S. higher ed institution, Gonzaga University, that's been in Florence for 60 years. So we're in our 60th year. We have about 200 students a semester, some of them in the room with us today. And we appreciate you all coming from outside to visit us and sit in our school desks and act like you're back at Universitas. So we apologize for the informal setting, but it's fitting because we are a university with undergraduate students here now, and this is for them as well as for our guests. So it is my pleasure to welcome our visitor today, Dr. Rivera Garza, but also I'm going to leave the introductions to Professor Raveggi, who's the organizer of this fantastic series. I want to say a few words about Professor Raveggi, who teaches for us here at Gonzaga and Florence and has for almost a decade. Not only a great classroom teacher, but this evening's particular for him because he's bringing his interests together really well, having published a number of studies about the intersections of literature between the United States, Italy, and Mexico. So it's, I think, really one of the most important of the events we've had because this really touches something that's crucial to his research and personal interests. So I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight and welcome you all to Gonzaga and Florence. Thank you.
C'è il microfono? No microphone?
No.
Bene. No microphone. It's okay?
It's okay.
Bene. I don't know if I'm going to switch into Italian or Spanish or Chilango or but the ones who knows what I mean probably will be the language, I don't know. Welcome. I'm Professor Raveggi. It happens that I also work on not only on the area where our guest is coming from, the two areas, Mexico and the US, and the intersection, because I work also on this very concept of borderland. We start from a book that has less to do with this topic, the topic of borderlands in a broad sense, but I feel there's a possible connection because one of the probably most important thing of borderlands is the role of women, the role and the power of women, and obviously the power against women is also in the very process of understanding the borderlands. We start from Liliana's Invincible Summer, a sister's search for justice. That is a very deep search, as you see, for justice. Justice and search are two terms that help you to define and to understand the book. But it's also a book about grief and how you can also work on grief and the loss of a sister. It's interesting because it's a memoir. It's a memoir with, if you want, an experimental term. It's a memoir that aims, first of all, to create a character that is also a sister who has been killed by her boyfriend now 30 years ago. Now it's 30 years from this event. And her sister, the sister of Liliana, Cristina, started this search from a file. And the word file is also, in my opinion, significant because define this evanescence of a life that happens when a system, like in this case, the Mexican government, do not consider this violence against women that is, let's say, not the topic of the book, but the background. More the theory, if you want, that is the one of that create the very power in Mexico, but not only in Mexico. I would like to say that it's not only a book about Mexico, not only because the author is living in the US for many different reasons. One of them is also, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a novel, partly fictional, non-fictional, fictional. So fiction here is a way to put like stitches probably on the memory, no, of not only the author, but the memory of an entire generation, probably the memory of a nation. It's a book that relates with the loss, but also with the power of man against women, power of patriarchy, power again of the government. And it's at the same time it's sad to start with that, not to start with this idea, no? Because the very first pages are about this search. On the first day of the search, when Cristina decided to look at the file, and the file is no word. So an author like Cristina decided to start this search with the instruments. That is, on one side, memory, on the other side, fiction. Okay, this is very important thing. So I will define this a peculiar memoir. I will give you a few more ideas about this book. It's composed by personal diaries, the very voice of the friends and also the family of Liliana, and also obviously there's one character that is not a character, but is more like a voice. At the same time, is sort of collectionist. No, that's try to be obviously without the cold view of a collectionist. Wants to recreate this let's say this mess, this void in a very, in my opinion, in a very vivid way. So at the end, let me say it's a happy book, in my opinion, of a sad story. I would like to ask you, how do you start? No, if you all will read the book, you understand from the very beginning the urgency, the need of this book. But when do you start thinking about this book in this way, with this shape, no? Or how you decide to follow the shape of a memoir, as I said, with documents, even have photos, no? Different photos. I found that, I don't know why the Italian edition and the American edition are a little different, probably you'll have also that. The less photo in the Italian edition, more photos in the American edition. I don't know, probably to say that. I'm sorry, Julia. Sorry. No, it's I think. But again, as I said, is a quest, is a search, is part of a memoir, and is a memoir again of an entire generation and against an entire power, an entire government. So tell us.
All right. Thank you, Alessandro. Alessandro, right?
Sí.
Yes, así estoy pronunciando bien.
Puedes decir Alejandro.
Alejandro. Well, good evening, everyone. Buenas tardes. Buonasera. Io sono molto contenta de estar aquí. No is on my Italian. That's what I always say. That's as far as I go in Italian. But I'm actually very happy to be here, and having the opportunity to talk with all of you tonight is such a privilege. So thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for opening up the doors of this university here in Florence, and especially to talk. Being here and talking about this book is really important to me. I think the relationship of, I'm going to move the conversation a little bit from your first question, because I was talking to Alejandro right before we officially began this conversation, and he was telling me about his interest in multilingual writing. And let me start with that. How that might relate to
It was the last question, but maybe the first.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
No, because it's the last question. It feels
Well,
like
I can wait.
if a scholar
No,
we can start with that. It was the last extra question that I can put in every, like an ingredient, like
I'm going to give
ingredient
a
Mexican.
preview
Van.
into the question, and then we can fully discuss the question later. All right? This is a book that was very difficult to write. It starts on July 16, 1990 in Mexico City, where my younger sister Liliana Rivera Garza was victim of a femicide at the hands of her then ex-boyfriend Ángel González Ramos. A couple of months after the crime was committed, a judge in Mexico City found that she had enough evidence to issue an arrest warrant against Ángel González Ramos, and he promptly ran away, and he remains at large to this day. So as you can see, that's one big reason to write a book about a dear sister who is still waiting for justice to be served. It is a story that I had tried to write many times. I do believe at times that I became a writer in order to write this story, and it's taken me all these years to learn or to unlearn preconceived notions of what writing is, in order to be able to honor the life of my sister. Writing about violence, and especially against violence, is a very slippery task. It's full of dangers and risks. And I had to keep all of them in mind as I was trying to get to the heart of the story, trying to find out what the heart of the story really was. Of course, I wanted to talk about and put together all the information that might allow me and readers to understand why this femicide took place. But as I was doing the research, conducting interviews, doing field research, reading files, reading my sister's documents, I think I came to understand that the heart of the story was my sister's life. There is something really curious that happens when we're dealing with a loss that is related to violence, like in this case. Usually these stories tend to focus mostly on the crime, on the dying, on the passing as such. And that's part of a whole narrative, a death narrative, so to speak, a patriarchal narrative that is constantly teaching us about the limits of women's agency. It's constantly also exonerating the perpetrators and blaming the victims through a very specific form of this narrative, better known as the passionate crime. Right? This is pretty much what we are used to when we watch Hollywood movies, the kinds of movies that pay a lot of attention about the mysterious, difficult mind of the murderer, or the kinds of series that place just undue attention, I believe, on the glory of the detective work or police work. And most of these works tend to forget that the women that they're talking about, the victims that they're talking about, had rich, complex, beautiful lives too. So from the very beginning I didn't want to go the other way. I didn't want to kill my sister again. I didn't want to suffocate her again. I had uncovered her archive. And this is, I guess with this I will wrap up the first question. We have preserved Liliana's belongings in a series of boxes at my parents' home. I personally wasn't brave enough to open those boxes for many, many years, 30 years more or less. So when I was thinking about the book, in fact I was thinking about opening up the case. That was the first intention. When I was thinking about going back to talk openly about this case, I needed to find a way to contact my sister's friends from 30 years back. And I don't know if you've tried to do that, but it's quite difficult. People back then didn't have Facebook, right? Or cells, or Instagram, or anything like that. So it's quite difficult. So I was looking for an address book, just some information that might lead me back to these friends. And I came across this very rich set of documents written by my sister herself, little notes, letters that she had transcribed again and again, pieces of diaries, things of that sort that she had carefully preserved. So when I saw that, I said, this is a novel. I've been trying to write this book, and obviously I wasn't able to do that in the past because I had tried to write it within the confines of fiction. So when I had access to all these documents, I knew that I had to work with a different mindset. So I needed fiction, of course, because there were many things that I didn't know. But I had access to this very rich archive. So I worked very closely in a dynamic way with the documents as such. So that's how I began the writing of the book. And just that the peek at the multilingual aspect of it that we are going to be developing later is that I was in the United States when I began writing this book. And I've been living in the United States for about 30 years too. Notice the number of years. There's a connection perhaps there. And I've been, working in English. I teach classes in English. But most of my creative work, I've written most of my creative work in Spanish. When I began writing this work, however, entire sections included here were originally written in English. And some other sections came out naturally in Spanish. The way I explained this to myself, I hadn't felt the urge to do that in my previous work. I do write a lot of my academic work in English, and that's a different type of activity. But in this case, I was quite surprised because it is a very personal book after all, and it was just surprising to me that in order to write my most personal book, I felt the need to use my second language. Yeah. So, what is going on? Why am I doing this? And I remember a novel by a Canadian writer. Perhaps some of you have read her, Anne Michaels, Fugitive Pieces, and she has some. Do you know the book? It's a really good book. They made a movie based on that book. I didn't see the movie because I love the book and I was so
And in general, in movie they rated the multiple language.
Well, that too. But she included certain reflections there that were really, really interesting. It's a very complex story, but this is a person who comes to Canada when he's not really young, early 20s perhaps. That's a teenager perhaps, I'm not so sure, but he's not a child. So he starts to write in English. And something that is very relevant for him is to be able to write about painful experiences that were lived in a different language as a way of protecting himself. And I'm thinking, so perhaps that's the reason I'm doing this. That I need certain buffers, sort of, a protection. And speaking about events that I had gone through in Spanish, that now writing that in English allowed me a careful distance with my materials. This is just a peek, so we can talk about that later.
I'd love to hear about that.
It's a cliffhanger.
I remember that another case that probably you know is one of Raymond Federman, that is an American author who was speaking French, and the event of his life is different from your event, but it's another huge loss. He completely lost his family during the deportation of the Jewish people in France, and he moved to the US and started writing in English, but he also switched between French, and when he wanted to have an access to his private memory, he used French, English, and obviously as a Jewish man, he would also use the Hebrew sometimes. It's a very funny author, I recommend, if you want to read. He wrote a lot of books. So the question is in the end, no? But you already answered, so we can also skip the question.
But this is a question for me, it's an open question. I'm not so sure of what I just said.
we can have questions about that question. So we can. So you also answered my second question. So,
that too.
Anyway, I can skip because we have two huge questions that I would like to ask you. Well, first of all, probably everyone understands this book about concept that, especially in the feminist movement, is really present, the one of sisterhood. And here, this book, it's heavily a theme, topic, not only an abstract theory. Sisterhood for the recent Mexican feminist movement has been one of the most important things. The fact that you can recognize and you can help each other, and you can consider also yourself a victim of patriarchy, a victim of, again, a culture and a state that is machist, that is also violent against women. I remember that I was in Mexico recently, and I was so impacted by the happily violent manifestations of women. They're very angry, they're full of rage, but it's true, the fact that they have to free themselves from that. As I said, it's a book about Mexico, a book about, in a sense, also Mexico City as a transitional object. I don't know, is a place to grow, but also can be a very, as you see from the book, also very dangerous place. Mexico has also a history of strong women, I would like to say like you, but also I would say after reading this book like Liliana, because the portrait of Liliana is really amazing, and it's also, as I said, it's also a tender book. You listen to the songs, you listen to through the voice of her friends, but I remember that to read that one of the first feminist movement briefing, no, I don't know how to say, but Congress were happening in Mexico. I remember Antonieta Rivas Mercado, that is one of the first probably feminist writers at the beginning of the 20th century. As well, she has a very tragic end of her life in Paris. But I remember also the generation of Rosario Castellanos, so I'm talking about also writers, Amparo Davila, Elena Garro. So, what is, very broad question, what is, after writing this book, but in general for your other books, what is the value of this concept of sisterhood, being also a Mexican woman?
Yeah, good. You were referring to the 1916 Feminist Congress, the first Feminist Congress ever to take place in Mexico. And the leader of that Congress was Elena Garro, the sister of the governor of Yucatan. It's a very courageous woman, very luminous too.
The Congress.
And
it was one of the first Congress.
It was the first ever in Mexico.
But in the world,
in the world too. Yeah. There's something interesting about places where there's a lot of violence, and then there is a lot of activism against violence. I mean, there's a correlation there, and it does make sense. As perhaps some of you know, that figures of gender violence in Mexico are simply horrific. An average of 10 women are killed by their intimate partners on daily basis in this country, and this has been happening for a number of years. This is not new. Now, having said that, I hate to give you the impression that violence against women is just a Mexican thing, or a Latin American thing, or something that is heavily, Latin American, and which is it is not true. Figures might be not as horrific in other places, but they're awful and they're sad. In the United States, where I live, an average of 3 women are killed also on a daily basis by their intimate partners. And 3 women is a lot of women, for only a day. There is less language able to convey this violence publicly in the United States than it is in places like Mexico or Latin America, and that might be the reason why it appears that this violence is somehow Latin American, or from the developing world, or however you want to call it, with this colonialist language. The truth is that violence against women is a worldwide event. It is a sort of epidemic. It affects all of us. It crosses so many borders, geopolitical borders, economic borders, class borders, racial borders. So it's, as Rita Segato, this very influential Argentinian scholar, has argued, we're living a war unleashed against women worldwide. And I sincerely think so. I think the peak, the most visible aspect of this war is femicide. And a concept that entered the penal code of Mexico only in 2012. I said that, but I've learned that there is no such a thing as femicide in the Italian penal code, and this is 2024. So there's a lot to think about on this issue, right? So, in this context of gender inequality and all the violence that comes as a result of structural gender inequality, it is more or less natural that women organize themselves. Of course, it is very common, and I share this condition, to be rageful, rightfully so. And so, in the last 20, 30 years, there has been a very strong women's mobilization, a very strong feminist movement too, both in Mexico and in places like Argentina. And I'm sure you've heard about Marea Verde, and how a couple of years ago they were able to decriminalize abortion, for example, in Argentina. Something that the new president, Milei, is trying to revert immediately, to the surprise of no one. Yeah. So, for all these women, I think sisterhood, the notion of being together, the possibility of being heard. The words in Spanish is no estás sola, you are not alone, have become increasingly important. And to me, this is especially literally relevant, since I'm talking and I'm writing literally about my younger sister. So there is a connection that is based on love. There is a connection that is based on justice. On rage and the search for justice. I think it's also important just to very briefly note that all this sisterhood, all this coming together, is as relevant, in my view, as the census. So there are plenty of feminisms in our context. We might not agree. I'm very interested, for example, in the kind of intersectional feminism that incorporates both class and race in whatever view we might develop in regards to gender. And I understand that not all feminists might be as equally concerned about these other issues as I am. And yet, I think we all face a common enemy. And in keeping that in mind is very relevant to me too. So both things, the fact that we don't have to agree about everything, but the fact that we have to be very aware that we are facing a common enemy. So that's sisterhood for me in a nutshell.
It's interesting what you say, because it's partly also the methodology of your book, no? To show to the reader different perspectives, no? To this case, no? Let me say this word, sorry, to create a portrait of your sister, no? Not dissensus, but in a sense different, no? Different voice.
Yeah.
The second half of the book is basically made out of the voice, no? It's interesting how do you recreate this chorus of voices that help the reader to understand, no? The identity and of your sister. You anticipated also another question, but I can also jump to that because it's interesting to me that you are, as you already said, you live in the US, and especially you teach, and you are a scholar in university. Because I feel that it's another peculiar feature of this book, an interesting feature, is the description of life on campus, no? And the life of the Mexican studentship that I found amazing, because I was a professor there, and I found the very creative, no, studentship. Especially I was teaching at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. It was like a monument that you have to, I don't know, it's like teaching at the Duomo in Florence. No, it's a national treasure. And I remember how the studentship was determined, was intelligent, was witty, no, and
Very political, yeah.
Very political, but also in a creative sense, not only political. And I found that in the description of your sister and the friends of your sister. So what I would like to ask you, how is the perception of this topic, the topic of violence, what do you feel on campus? No? If you have a discussion with your students as well about that, how is and if you want also to compare, no, the life of the American campus through this topic and the Latin American one. No?
Yeah, wow, that's a tough.
Although I know.
have to turn off Facebook right now.
My theory is that talking about the US is reductive, because now we are living in this sort of borderland with US and Mexico are interacting with each other in positive and negative sense, and probably you are an example of that. How now the border is just a thing that only bad politicians use to have votes. Also in the recent elections, now you see how they are still using the history of immigration, although they are coming from Wisconsin. Like very weird thing. What politics is.
Yeah, that is so true.
No.
Let me
So,
tell you a little bit about why it was so important to me to bring in, to invite in all these different voices, at times contradictory, contrasting in any case, always contesting each other. I'm convinced that our eyes are not isolated, that we become what we are in contact with others. We are shaped and informed, and we depend on each other, right? And so I wanted very much to reflect that in terms of Liliana's life. I was privileged enough to have access to these many documents I told you about. And these are things that perhaps the younger in this room are used to keep electronically now, digitally now. Liliana kept every single thing that she wrote. And she used pretty much the same kind of preserving system that we use now in social platforms like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, right? I've been calling this archive an affective archive. It's an archive that goes beyond the reach of the state. It's an archive that is very much concentrated on relationships and how people affect each other. And so because I believe these, I needed to structure a book that could convey, that could embody that idea. And so obviously I included Liliana's own voice. This is her book, not my book. She's the protagonist of this book. I played a minor role. I'm obviously making a many decisions, but I tried, as I was making those decisions, I tried to keep her own writings in mind. I wanted to follow her lead very often. And so I finally was able to contact some of my sister's friends, some young boys back then, met now, who were in love with her best friend. I talked to some of my cousins and family members, and the only thing that I asked from them was a memory. I wanted them to gift me with a memory. I didn't say which one, I didn't put a date to that, I just said, tell me a memory of Liliana. Not the main one, not the most recent one, not the saddest one, just a memory. And so they came up with very different memories, and as soon as they started to talk, they wanted to talk even more. So I was conducting these interviews over the phone because it was during the pandemic, and these were very, very long phone calls. I told them that I was not recording the interviews, that I wanted to be fully present, that I was transcribing the interviews. So I just wanted to make sure that I was listening, fully listening there. And I told them that they were going to be able to read the material and to edit with me. And that if they didn't agree with something, if they just wanted something to be taken from what I've written, that I was going to be okay with that. That was the contract. And some of them actually did take advantage of these. Raul, one of my sister's friends, a guy who was very, very much in love with her back then, actually I had written about the relationship on campus, and he wrote back to me and he said, campus is a word that I would never use. In Mexico we don't say campus. We'd say ir a la escuela. And so, please, yeah, vas a la escuela. Así, vas a la escuela, it could be elementary school, it could be high school, it could be the university, but you don't say you go to campus. That's so, and snobbish. And then I said, well, you're totally right. So I had to scratch that out. And some other people just were paying attention to things that I had misheard, names that I, that kind of thing. But in general, I think they were quite happy with my rewriting of their experience and their words. So I devoted some attention to Liliana's life on campus, because Liliana grew up like I did in the province of Mexico, in a city, Toluca, which is like an hour away from Mexico City. So we were kids, girls coming from these, little. It was not a little town; it's an industrial city, but it's a city with no cultural tradition, and a very conservative city too. So moving from Toluca into the big, capital city, in a campus with these, architectonically, gave you a sense of freedom. I don't know, I wanted to pay attention to that, to how our bodies respond to places. Like here we are, the two of us, away from you. We are at the same level, so guys in the back cannot actually look at us. So it's complicated to have an equal relationship in these conditions, right, materially. So the same goes for the campus, like in the opposite sense, right? They were these open spaces, and then I was very curious about the classrooms. Most of the classrooms included like a seminar, a table at the center, and people around. I don't know, I thought Liliana must have been really happy here. And a controlling, manipulative boyfriend must have been out of his mind, just recognizing Liliana's increasing freedom. And that's one of the contexts of the mother, a young woman who was an intelligent woman who was increasingly in love with architecture, someone who was getting good grades, thinking about moving, doing an MA, a PhD, things of that sort. And while the boyfriend remained in Toluca and just doing some kind of manual labor. So it is a context that, at least to me, helped me explain some of the features of that, a very complicated context in which usually femicides take place. Right?
Yeah, see, I was thinking about the very nature of Mexico City that has attractive and repulsive at the same time. No
Yeah.
feature is it's a vortex, no, that sometimes helps. No, there's a lot of solidarity between women in
of
Mexico
course.
City. And I remember when I was in Mexico, just an anecdote that I had the opportunity to interview a feminist activist there, and she told me that for her reaching the Estado de Mexico, that is basically a province outside, was like reaching hell, because Estado de Mexico it's just next to Mexico City, and it's one of the probably hopeful places, no, for
Ecatepec, she must have been thinking or talking about Ecatepec.
So I remember that in a few kilometers you have hell, no, in terms of as a woman, no, at the same time. Mexico City is a city vibrant with multiculturalism. There's a lot of, let's say, also opportunities, no, for women like Liliana to grow and to then decide to go abroad in a sense, no, as she was deciding. So I don't think we have time for the question on multilingualism anymore. But the
We're so good, I
no,
mentioned that at the beginning.
no, the good thing that I was thinking about, the connection probably with multilingualism and your multilingual experience, is the fact that in this book, that I don't know in the full book, no? You are basically proposing an idea of authorship that is, it's probably diminished, no, in a sense. You are a collector, you are an interviewer, you are someone who connects the dots, no, in a sense, not the prominent authors. Probably in the sense also the authors that decided to use multiple language decided to diminish the idea of the authorship in a sense, no? Because they're using echoes of their different voices. They're split their own identities in a sense. I don't know what you think, but probably are disconnected in a sense.
No, I'm thinking about what you're saying. I
It
think
is
there's a connection.
Also with
There's
voices, not with languages in the sense.
no.
There's also a reference to the US, but
but there is a connection, definitely.
it's a very
We
sensitive.
tend to believe that you can only write the kinds of things that you have, and in the language that you have mastered, that you need mastery over something in order to be able to talk about something, right? And I think that notion of mastery over is very complicated. And I think when we write, especially creative writing, you need certain kind of vulnerability. Otherwise, there is no place for the reader to come through, right? And vulnerability and mastery, I think there is a contestation, a serious contestation about the two of them. So perhaps if we focus on the issue of vulnerability as a central aspect of writing in general, and of connection, of human connection too. You're not going to be able to connect to people if you don't have that kind of vulnerability first, right? Kind of opening, right? And so in this case, in the book, I wanted Liliana to be the protagonist of the story. I didn't want to editorialize Liliana or over-interpret Liliana. I didn't want to project my fears, stereotypes, longing on what she wrote. I wanted to honor her, to respect her too. So I joined her as much as I could. I followed her as far as she allowed me about the things that she said, that she actually wrote. And when she didn't say something, or when she evaded certain topics, I needed to honor that too. So this is not, I don't see this as a memoir book. I don't think it's a kind of book, the typical tell-all book that is very common in the U.S. Industry.
Yeah, probably I was using the word memoir in the broad sense.
Yeah. I'm just.
Also provocative.
No, that's good. That's good.
Because I don't like the memoir.
No, but there is a discussion.
Yeah.
It's a serious discussion, and that's the reason why I think we have to talk about that. I see this work as because memoirs tend to be, self-confirming. It's
Yeah.
the hero confirming a trajectory, and I think that's not the story that I'm telling here. This is a work of documentary writing, and that's the reason why I needed all this input, and I had this wonderful access to my sister's own voice. So I needed to put all that together, thinking about how to put that together. What is the place of the fragment in connection to the whole? How this fragment is going to reshape or alter or create tension with the whole story. I think that was the most interesting part for me in terms of the decision making as an author. What kind of tension am I willing to allow here? Things of that sort. I wanted Liliana to be there, but I didn't want Liliana to be there on the public arena, so to speak, by herself alone. So I wanted to, since I was invoking her, using her own words, I also needed to be there. But I wanted to keep a very discreet presence. It is not my book, this is not a book about my pain. This is not a book about what happened to me and my family after the fact. This is a book about her, about the things that she was able to see and the things that she wasn't able to see, the kinds of things that the language of the 1990s didn't allow her to see, the kinds of things that the patriarchal narrative of the 1990s didn't allow her or us to see. And so I wanted that tension. And it is a book, and I think it is important for me to say that too. I'm saying that this is not a tell-it-all type of book, because it is a book that is very careful with silence too. It opens up several doors into the story, but it's very conscious that not all doors should be open, and not everybody is welcome. It is a book that it's also interested in creating that distance and keeping that kind of intimacy where it belongs. Because at times we don't know, we don't have language for that, and I wanted that kind of speechlessness to be part of the book too. That silence, that kind of the unsayable, to be there, contained in the book. And at times, because some of the characters, some of the people that I was conducting interviews with, they just didn't want to. Like my father, at one point, I asked him a question and he said, "I'm not going to answer that." And I had to say, well, that's fine. I didn't even ask why. It's just, that's how it is, and that's how it is. And keeping that connection to both what we can say, or are willing to say, and the kinds of things that we just, that is not going to happen. The kinds of things that will remain also in the terrain of the unsayable. I think that's what books are for too. And that, my wish is, of course, that might allow us to jump into ourselves too, to leap into those silences that we keep in ourselves as readers, as human beings, as people on this planet too. So, yeah.
Thank you. Silence, probably it's time to shut up and to give you opportunity to, because I know there's a lot. So this book is a case.
It is.
In Italy, I don't know if it's in any other place.
Oh,
we have
sorry.
lots of readings.
Okay, yeah.
No, a case, very speaking.
Yeah.
Because I remember this book has been protagonist of a reading. No?
Just a couple of days ago, we had this tremendously moving experience in Milano.
Yeah, collective reading of the book. So
Some journalists and writers were reading the book on March the 8th, International Women's Day. And it was just amazing. When I first published this book, my US editor asked me, "What do you want of the book?" And I immediately said, "I want Liliana to go places." That's what I said. And then on this March the 8th, when all these Italian women were reading the book out loud, I was like, Liliana is actually coming places, and that made me tremendously happy too.
Podemos hablar en español ahora. ¿No? ¿No era así? Una obra en español, en italiano, en florentino.
I have my translator here, so Italian, I'll be able
Let's use a translator. Translators always to be, no?
No, I wanted to thank you, take the opportunity to thank Julia Zamagna, who is a translator of this book. We've been traveling to Italy these days, and she's been working so hard. Translators are just like magicians. So good. So I feel like really lucky to be working with her and with Sur.
Do that because I know Julia is very shy, so I mean, it's a way to make her more red. Ben, I know you have questions. I know you have lots of questions. How this book is so Italian as well, because in Italy we have lots of issues with femicide as well.
I know.
And recently, and so it's a book that is important also in this sense. But open questions. It's hard, I know.
Sorry, I don't know if I could speak to you in Spanish, but anyway.
Está bien.
Está bien, puedo hablar en español.
Claro, por supuesto.
Now, I was thinking about that multi-language writing, but because it happens to me too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was born in Argentina, so I speak Spanish. I write in Spanish, but I also write in English
Of course.
and in Italian. So,
Okay.
I am a translator.
Okay.
So when sometimes when I write in Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
I think in Italian or in English, and words can, the right word, you think about the right word in another language.
Yeah.
Does it happen to you?
All the time.
All the time, that's right.
Let me tell you.
great.
Let me tell you a story. Well, let me start by saying that I do believe that even when I write in Spanish now, I write in translation. It's a language that is always in connection with English, and it cannot be separated. I have this bilingual experience. It's not only the language as such, right? And there are words that, like all my academic work, all that language. I mean, of course, I read part of this work in Spanish, but my training, my academic training was in English, so most of my academic language comes naturally in English. But the other day, we were having, it was our first conversation, the first presentation of the book, I believe, first or second one. I was speaking Spanish and trying to describe what I felt when I first listened to the performance by the collective Las Tesis in Chile, A Rapist in Your Path.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I was overwhelmed by it, I was overtaken by emotion, and I feel this thing here in my back and here. I don't know. I was just trying to find the word, and I wasn't able to. And then Julia was translating, and in Italian she said, she used the word erizar, which was the word that I was looking for in Spanish. And so I was like, okay, so here's my translator. Using the word that I couldn't find in my my mother tongue. So, and there are words that in our conversation even these days, words that come in Spanish or come only in English, and it it's a matter for very interesting conversations. So because we're constantly dealing with both of them, which I believe is great for writing.
Yes, because sometimes I find that in Italian there are many adjectives. It's full of adjectives, and And sometimes you have this adjective in Italian that you cannot convey into another language because it has so many different colors, let's say, that you don't find the right adjective to put it in Spanish. So you go, that's why. It must find, no, you don't. And it's quite, it's all the time is living with different languages in your
Yeah, unfortunately, I can only speak, English and Spanish, but I can only imagine what would happen to me if I were able to speak Italian.
They are very similar also, Italian and Spanish. So many times I am speaking with someone in Spanish and then I say, well, you need Italian. That is quite normal.
Yeah. But it does help, right? When you're writing your creative work, just...
I don't know if it helps, but speaking different languages,
well, to me,
translate, self-translate. I don't know.
I'm trying to go back to the topic about vulnerability. So in that sense, it's not in the sense that we have more language or more words or things like that, but in the sense of that initial vulnerability that to me is so central for the act of writing. I think living in this kind of limbo or this two-way territory forces you to question language all the time. Nothing is automatic. Nothing is natural. And I think that's one of the first.
And the very concept of mother tongue has been contested many times.
Exactly.
No, it's a
Exactly.
very fragile concept.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, thank you. Yeah. I'm here because I wanted to be able to look at your faces.
My students.
Your students. Qué bien. Hola. Yes, wonderful.
From your experience, how would you compare the Mexican feminist movement to the American feminist movement?
What a wonderful question. Yeah. Well, living in the United States, I'm very concerned about what is happening in our country in terms of gender relations, of course. I think we're learning in a hard way that the rights are not carved in stone and that we can actually lose them if we do not organize and defend them. And there's a lot of activism, truly. Not enough, I think, yet. To me, we're living in a really dangerous moment. And when I speak of getting together and organizing ourselves, I'm not talking about 5 years from now. I'm talking about right now, the next minute. It's an impending danger. I think women in Mexico and in Latin America have shown great resilience, courage, and the capacity to organize too. Younger generations, women your age, who have been taking the streets, taking the public arena over, taking public language over too. And as I've said earlier, I really feel like I'm learning from them. So I've been a convinced feminist for many years. But the kind of issues that these younger generations have been facing, the lack of safety in public spaces, this alarming number of femicides, structural inequality at work and access to education, and well, we can continue on and on and on. I totally understand the rage of these young women, and I understand the reason why they come together and why they speak so highly and loudly about sisterhood. A complex word, of course, but I think one that is very much alive. I always mention the fact that Maria Verde in Argentina was able to decriminalize abortion because to me it's a great achievement. And I think we've been doing that. Younger generations have been able to secure that for Mexican women in several cities, several states of the country. More importantly, I think, I wouldn't have been able to write this book without the language developed by the feminist movement. I wouldn't have been able to even think about the possibility of telling this story otherwise, beyond the language of, the patriarchal narrative. So I think in many ways we all owe this possibility of creating different stories of lead, therefore different lives, to that work that takes place on the streets and classrooms and homes. It's just really relevant. If we are going to have a future, I think it depends on how well connected all these pieces are. Feminism being a central one. Yeah. Yeah, but thank you for your question. Yeah.
And background. And intention.
So don't you think that older generations of women in Latin America, because we both know very well Latin American, are in some way guilty of having done nothing?
Not at all. Yeah, well, there is a whole story though that has been neglected and has been overlooked.
Yes.
I was very happy that you mentioned that first feminist congress in Mexico in 1916.
Yes.
For a lot of people, it's just unthinkable.
Yes.
The fact that there was such a thing as a feminist congress in Mexico that early into the 20th century.
Mhm.
And there are plenty of examples like that. There were journalists writing incendiary articles in the press. There were lots of women writers reinventing the language. There has been, lawyers and doctors and all kinds of women workers participating in strikes. I think they've done and we've done our share.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we know very little about that. Official
Yes.
stories, official histories of our places on earth are usually not very careful about including our voices.
Yes.
And so I don't necessarily think that we haven't done enough. We do what we can, do what we have.
Yes,
right?
of course.
Yeah.
Well,
But I think it's very important, precisely because of that reason, it's very important to pay attention to these overlooked stories, to these overlooked voices. Once we do that, once we incorporate that into our perspective and way of looking at the world, I think massive transformation take place.
yes.
So that's yeah. All right. But thank you so much for your questions. We need to talk.
No, I remember that I was so impacted by the life and the example of Antonieta Rivas Mercado, no? Because she was married or girlfriend of José Vasconcelos, it was all the founding fathers of the Patria, no? And she killed herself, no? In Paris, but we don't know. There's a sort of so we don't know exactly how it ends. And she was one of the voice, no, powerful voice of Mexican women and writers who were. Anyway.
Yeah, plenty of those, and in fact, Sur, this publishing house, is translating a very important one. Elena Garro is a major voice in modern Mexican literature, and she wrote these monumental works, and they've been translated into other languages only now. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
And, voicing that.
Jason?
No, I just wanted to invite people to the reception.
I was like,
Yeah. Well, I
I cut your hand.
leave, so.
Good.
Okay.
Gracias.
Yeah. Gran poeta de Argentina, gracias total.
And questions can continue. Next door, we have a little reception.